So a little bit about myself. I'm part of the, I've been with PayPal for 5.5 years. And prior to that, I was doing a lot of consulting as well. And at PayPal, I'm part of the Southeast Asia team, and we're looking at growth within the Southeast Asia region, looking at different markets. And I've worked with our merchants, with our partners on a daily basis, looking at the same problem, like how do we grow their business? And the topic that comes up in every discussion is mobile, because we know that the consumers are using mobile, but then why are they not converting? So that initiative that we started with the community, we've already made a lot of progress on that. We have around 30 SIs that are part of the initiative, and we see a lot of transactions that are coming in through those experiments that are running. And as part of those, as part of that experiment, we've seen some learnings, and some of the learnings are really interesting, and some of them are really something that we did not expect that we got out of those experiments. And we just want to share some of those learnings with you today that we've seen with that initiative. So this is just an overview of like from the last Cyber Monday sales. Like if you look at the data, you look at the visits, it comes back to the point that I initially made, which is we see a lot of visits coming from the mobile devices. If you see over here, you have around 52% of visits on Cyber Monday that came through a mobile device. And then on desktop, we are around 49%. And then when you look at the actual revenue, the revenue is more coming from desktop. It's not coming from the mobile device. The mobile device revenue on a Cyber Monday event, which is like the biggest sales events across the world, we still see only 34% come through mobile devices. So there is a revenue gap. If you look at that gap over here, like between the visits to the actual payments, we do see an opportunity, which a lot of you guys will already be aware of, that on mobile devices we do see that gap. And if you look at the numbers by numbers, the sales from the smartphones hit a record 2 billion this last Cyber Monday. But again, this is only 26% of the overall sales volume, while the visits that we saw coming from the mobile devices were around 50%. So we're still not converting the way that we are converting on desktop. And that comes down to a lot of things. That comes down to consumer behaviors. That comes down to the way checkout is designed, the way you're looking at your consumer engagement. So all of that comes into the picture. So and as part of this initiative that we're running with a lot of SIs within the Magento community, we did some experiments and we have some learnings from that. So I will share some learnings, but this is actually the ecosystem that we've created. So, because as PayPal by ourselves, we can't get all the data. So we have to work with the merchants, with the partners, with the SIs, with the agencies to work through that experimentation model. So we've been very closely partnering with High Conversion, which is an analytics platform that gives us access to some really cool tools to run experiments. And then we have close to 30 agencies that are working with us today. And then we created an knowledge bases, we created a site which is mobileoptimized.org. I will share the link later in the slides as well. And then we created a community site, and then we have merchants that are participating through those SIs. So we created like an ecosystem for this whole experimentation initiative for our merchants to come on board and run those A/B test experiments with and without those optimizations and see what is the benefit. What do we get out of it? And this is the initiative by numbers. So we have around 172 mid-sized merchants in US, in Asia, Europe, and Latin America that are working on it. We have a partner, iCube, over here that is very closely working with us on the Magento community side. We have around 499 million value in transactions that have been processed through those experiments. And we've seen around 8.2% uplifts in revenue per visitor. I will take you through what revenue per visitor is in the next slide, but that's like a metrics that we are using to measure with and without those mobile optimizations that we have looked at. And then that 8.2% equates to around 856,000 in revenue if you are a $10 million merchant, which is a normal mid-market merchant for us. So what is revenue per visit? So revenue per visit is pretty simple. It's basically the total revenue you've earned in a time period. Like say, we look at 90 days of experiments. So in the 90 days, whatever revenue you have earned, divided by the number of visits. Because what we are looking at is how we can make those visits convert into payments. So we are looking at that metrics based on the visits. And that's why we are looking at a metrics which is revenue per visitor. And that gives us the RPV, which is, and we measure the RPV before the start of the experiment, and then we keep on measuring the RPV as the experiment goes and see how the RPV can increase. So now we'll share some learnings that we did as part of it. So we have quite a number of experiments. We have around 120 experiments that are live today. And that's a site, mobileoptimize.org, which has been created, which has all the information. So you can go to the website. It has all the experiments. It has all the data, all the graphs, all the bells and whistles that you will get are over there, which compares before and after. And these are some of the examples. Like we look at the coupon collapse. We looked at the floating checkout button. I will take you through the details in the next few slides, but this is just a summary of some of the stuff that we looked at. Something interesting is the numbers over there. You can see that we've seen quite a massive uptick in RPV, like something simple as removing a wish list option from the checkout has seen around 5.62% increase in RPV. We played a little bit around with the breadcrumbs. Breadcrumbs is something that's that's a topic that comes up in a lot of discussions within the e-commerce checkout flows, like do we need it or do we don't need it? So we did some testing on that as well. I will share some detailed numbers later on. And then like how do we reconfigure the continue shipping button to make sure that we remove the friction points. So this is just a summary. And then going into the details, I'll first touch base on the coupon option. So you might have seen on multiple sites where you see something like this, where when you go to the site and you're on the checkout page and you see a coupon option where you have to add in a coupon to get an offer from that merchant. What I have done as a consumer on these sites is that I will open up a new browser window and I will start searching for a coupon code for that merchant site. And then what happens is, in 30 seconds, a minute, I will forget about the actual shopping that I was doing on checkout. I will get busy with something else. Because I'm on a mobile device, and I might be in a bus, I might be on a train, and I'm just flicking through things. And as soon as I go to a new tab, I've pretty much lost the engagement with the merchant. And what we did an experiment where we did a control, which is this sort of experience, which we see on a lot of sites. And then we did a collapse version where you have the promo code option, but you have it collapsed. So the consumer has to actually click it. And when we ran the experiment for 90 days, in 90 days across multiple verticals, so we're not hitting like a specific merchant or so, we are running it across multiple merchants to get a feel of numbers across different consumers. And the numbers were amazing. Like on a smartphone, we saw an increase in RPV by 3.34%. The conversion was improved by 5.13% just by collapsing the coupon code option. It's pretty simple when you look at it, but from a consumer side of things, it gives you a more engaged consumer. And they're not looking at other things while they're on the website. So it's something that is critical to consider when you are designing your checkout flows, that just by making a simple change, it gives you such a big uplift in your revenue in converting those visitors which you were losing earlier. And we've done our distribution as well, like how much of the merchants were able to see positive, because there were some who went negative as well. But if we look at the overall scheme of things, it was very positive, that specific test. Next one, again, we've seen it quite a lot, which is the auto cart update. When you are on a checkout page and you get to the cart page, and by the time you get on a cart page, you're buying something, but you want two items like that. So you don't want one, you want two of that. So you would have when you get to the checkout page and you add in something like this, you add in something like two instead of one, it asks you to update the shopping cart. And there's a button. As soon as you have a button, that means that the consumer has to click again. And being mobile consumers, Monisha did a great work explaining how things are on mobile, where like people are getting frustrated if they have to spend more time. Like we as consumers would like to get things done really quickly, and we want others to do things for us. And one of them is this over here, where like consumers don't like clicking the update shopping cart button again. They would like to have this automatically updated. So we did the same thing over here. We did a control versus treatment, where we ran an experiment in a site with an update button and then a site without an update button. And we saw quite a massive uptick. We saw around 8.19% uplifts in the overall revenue per visitor, which was now converting. So again, it comes down to driving consumer engagement, like making sure that you keep the consumer engaged while they are on the checkout page is key to increasing the RPV, increasing the conversion, increasing your average online order value over here as well. Because if you have that cart automatically updating, you're making sure that you are convincing the buyer to buy those 2 items or 3 items. If you have an update button, they might put 2 in there, but they might not click the update button. They might just click the checkout button and they might go through the flow thinking they bought 2, but they've just bought 1. So these things we've seen. And this definitely is something that is critical to consider for merchants out there who are looking at mobile web as one of their channels, and they want to make sure that they can engage consumers in the checkout journey. We did another test, which is again, within fashion, this is pretty common as well, having a wish list button on the checkout page. So in some cases it's good, but in some cases it's adding to friction. Like cases where it's good is like, as a consumer, I would add something to my wish list because I know that in 3 months' time there might be an offer coming on this item. Today it might not be an offer because it just came out in the market, but I would like to add it to my wish list because in 3 months' time I might look at it again when there is a sale going on and stuff like that, and that time I might get a good offer or a good coupon, but I have it in my wish list, in my cart saved, so I can check out later. But we have seen that by adding it to wish list, this adds to friction in buying as well, because they might add it to wish list, but they might never buy it. So we did a test with and without the wish list option. And we saw that without the wish list option, it creates more urgency. And if you don't have the wish list item, the consumer is engaged right at that moment to convert that payment. By having the wish list item, they just delay it to, okay, I am on a train, I will add it to my wish list. When I go home, I might buy it. And then they forget about it. Because it's a small window of opportunity that we have on the mobile device when we can convert a visit into a payment. And that's something that we saw with removing the wish list item. And then I'm from PayPal, so we just did a few tests on the PayPal button itself as well. And something that is a big value add within the e-commerce world is our PayPal Express Checkout shortcut button. We call it shortcut because it saves the consumer a lot of clicks to make a payment. So what that button does is that as soon as you click the button, you're on a checkout page, PayPal will provide the shipping address and the billing address and the consumer information to the merchant. So you don't have to go through the whole flow of asking for the shipping address, multiple fields, like it can be like 15 text boxes where you're asking for your home address, zip code, like country, all kinds of stuff. So what PayPal shortcut button does is that you click the button and then you go to the PayPal flow and you're done with the payments. So it's like, instead of like I going through 15 input fields, I just click it 2 times and I'm done with the payment. So we did some tests with the checkout button. Something that we hear a lot from our merchants is that with the shortcut button, which makes the process really easy, we've heard that the average order value goes down as well. Because for some of the merchants, that means that they can't do upsells. Because as soon as you're ready to buy, you click the PayPal button and you're done with the payment. So for a merchant to do any upsells or to do some value-add services as part of the purchase, they're not able to do that, and they think that the basket size will go down. So we wanted to make sure that we do some tests on that as well. So we checked the average order value as well, and the results that came out were pretty cool. So we saw the revenue per visitor to go up by around 4.96%. The conversion went up. And then if you look at the average order value, that didn't change much. So that proves the point, like on the mobile devices especially, having a checkout button, a PayPal checkout button, where PayPal provides the shipping information for an e-commerce merchant, that saves the friction, that saves a lot of clicks, and that helps the conversion done into clicks. So it's something that, again, is critical to consider when you're defining your checkout. Some unexpected results as well, because whatever we have just gone through is something that we in e-commerce, like working with merchants every day, we know that these things, we've known these things for years, but we've never like done experiments to prove it, but we've known that these things have these expected results, that they will give you uplift in conversion. So nothing like really strange, but at least now we have numbers to prove that they do help. But there were some unexpected results as well that we saw. The topic that comes up in pretty much every e-commerce discussion when we're designing the websites is breadcrumbs, right? And everybody talks about breadcrumbs that, because when we talk about checkout, the first thing that everybody talks about is having less and less text on the checkout page. And breadcrumbs is something that, again, is an extra text on that page, where like breadcrumb is something where like you can, if I'm on a checkout page and I want to go back to the actual product category page, I can go back to that through the breadcrumbs. And people say that removing text from the page will help you convert better. But we saw a total opposite when it comes to breadcrumbs, where removing the breadcrumbs, like having a page like this, where you have a breadcrumb to go back to the category page, to like a page like this, gave us negative RPV. So we noticed in our test that removing breadcrumbs was not something that's good for the e-commerce businesses. So definitely consumers love breadcrumbs, which is always a debatable topic, that do you have breadcrumbs or not have breadcrumbs? So by numbers, it looks like, and if you look at the conversion went down by around 14% on those websites, because consumers that like to flick between different products and different categories, and they're not going to use the back button. They like to be able to do it through the product page. And what breadcrumbs helps you is an easy access to those product category pages. We saw a downtick of around 7% across the base on the mobile devices. Desktop, not much, because again, when you're a desktop consumer, you're in a very different setup. If you look at all the tests, all the data that I was showing through the pages, the tablet consumers are the ones that we still can't understand. Like in some cases, like where we're seeing good performance on mobile and desktop, tablet is negative. And in some cases where we're seeing negative on smartphone and desktop, the tablet users are positive. So we're still going through the rounds and rounds of finding out what is the consumer behavior on the tablet users, but they are a little bit different. They have been an exception for us across our experiments. So next step, we would love, we already have some involvement from the Asia-Pacific community within the SIs and the agencies as part of the initiative. But we would like to have more and more agencies and SIs involved. And if you look at by numbers, the initiative, the initiative is sponsored for 60 days. We have around 120 experiments, and you can pick and choose experiments as an SI to work with your merchants. The way the funding works is that PayPal will give you $2,500, and then the SI will put $2,500, and then the merchant gets like $5,000 to do some marketing, and then we can use their site to do some A/B testing. And that gives us data, which is eventually helpful for the merchant as well. It's not just for us, it's for the SIs, it's for the merchants, it's for the overall community. It's going to be very, very critical, this data, because as we look at expanding more and more on mobile, especially Asia Pacific, the part of the world that we live in, over here, like most of the internet consumers, they've never used a desktop device. They've always used a mobile device because their first impression of internet was through a mobile device. So mobile is becoming more and more critical when it comes to e-commerce businesses, when it comes to increasing revenues. So there is definitely an opportunity, and we would love to partner with a lot of more SIs in this part of the world, and we would love to have you on board as part of this initiative to get more and more data that is more regionally as well. Oh. That's the web page, mobileoptimize.org. It has a lot of information. It has a lot of workbooks. It's got a knowledge base. It's got all the details on all the experiments that I covered, and then a lot more as well. So if you're designing a website today where you have a mobile consumer base, then it's definitely a good read. I would definitely recommend. We use it every day with our customers when we are working with them on solving their payment friction points. Yep, that's pretty much it from my side. If you've got any questions, come see me at the PayPal booth, or I'm happy to take any right now. All good? Cool. Thank you.